That's the name of the game. Shut America down. Pay to ship General Motors overseas. Make 35 million people buy offshore banks insurance and have the IRS enforce it. Private taxes. You pay your taxes to the bankers.
You've heard Alex
Coming up in the next segment, I'm going to go ahead and open the phones up throughout the remainder of the transmission while interspersing important news and information. But the toll-free number to join us here on air is 877-789-ALEX. That's the Sunday number. It's different than the weekday number. 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. First-time callers. I want to add that caveat. Please give others a chance to get involved on air. We don't screen your calls, but occasionally I throw out the first-time caller, unless it was like last Sunday where I took calls from police and military about the Secretary of the Army saying they basically want martial law permanently to just put troops on the streets everywhere and have checkpoints and no due process. And that's in the Council on Foreign Relations current publication, Foreign Affairs, and it's CFR.org. Later, ISSA reveals wiretap docs from DOJ mole. And again, this actually came out about 3 months ago on our show from Wayne Madsen, and about 3 weeks ago, it came out in the Examiner news site, had a report on it. But now Holder has confirmed it into the congressional record. The Justice Department has now put a shield up around Holder from prosecution after contempt vote. Yeah, how do you prosecute the Attorney General? Well, you can still have a grand jury at the state level indicting. That's why we have a separation of powers. If one gets corrupt, the state gets corrupt, the feds come in. If the feds get corrupt, the state comes in. But see, the feds have in the last few decades, well, really since the Civil War, but especially in the last few decades, have said, no, states really don't even exist. And now the UN and NATO, through their puppet Obama, have in different congressional hearings and in public statements and in executive orders, have told Congress that they don't exist, basically. They're ceremonial, and Obama can shut down power plants. He can sign executive orders. He can ban guns. He can ship jobs to China. He can say the UN is in command of our military. By the way, do you need me to play those clips again or read his letter on air to Congress? I can play the Secretary of Defense telling Congress that. If you missed it, just type in Secretary of Defense tells Congress that NATO and UN give President authority to go to war. I mean, look it up. I've probably played it 20, 30 times. By the way, I have a clip I'm going to play one more time. This is a clip of CNBC a week and a half ago. And this illustrates what's happening with healthcare. It illustrates what's happening with the $34 trillion now it's being reported by Associated Press that's gone in one form of bailout or another, or in the Federal Reserve open window since 2008. Where they say, oh, we're too big to fail. Give us unlimited money. Oh, we got to raise your taxes. You're in debt now. Same thing in Greece, same thing in Ireland, same thing in Iceland, same thing in Spain, same thing here. And they tell you you owe all this money because of the welfare people. That's just their constituents that'll riot because they're dependent. That's just their caste that you see in front of the curtain. Behind the curtain are the monopoly men. This is so simple. The big, mega, ultra-powerful corporations all live off of government contracts. Government-empowered oil cartels. Government blockage of oil fields being developed to keep prices up. Government shutting down power plants. Governments raising taxes and having tax incentives to move offshore. And if that isn't enough, use your tax money to move the factories to Brazil, Mexico, China, and Eastern Europe. That's why I actually went out and bought a Ford. I haven't had a Ford since high school. I had a Mustang. And I went and got one. Not that I even really like Fords, but it's the last company that actually makes something here that didn't take a bailout. But that's a side issue. If you want to know why this healthcare thing happened and why Roberts voted for it, it's because the big money power wanted it. Okay? And imagine, it'd be bad enough to have socialism and just say we're to give everybody free health care, which will bankrupt everything. But this isn't even that. This is the insurance companies being able to reduce the care you get, control the care you get, even when you have insurance, This is what even mainline analysts say, but it's back of the paper. Death panels, as they're known, and make 30-plus million people. They debate if it's 33, 35, 36, 37. The point is 30-plus million people buy a product, and if you don't, the IRS comes and grabs your paycheck or your bank account and gives you penalties and interest. I told you 2 years ago it was a tax. Because that's what it is. And it's a tax directly to the corporations. They're trying to even blame the IRS, which is a criminal organization, violates due process, has their own little kangaroo courts, just like family courts are only 100 years old. See, these tyrants just make it up as they go along. And holders shipping guns and hand grenades into Mexico to demonize the Second Amendment, as Issa came out this week, again, told you 2 years after I told you what was going on. And I'm not bragging. This was all in federal court cases. This was all coming out 2 years ago when the first inklings of Fast and Furious began to leak. We have press conferences of Holder admitting he was running the program and then later saying he never heard of it. He just didn't say the details, but he said Operation Gunrunner Fast and Furious. Of course he engaged in perjury. Of course he's a criminal. He created a false flag destabilization, thousands dead in Mexico, hundreds dead here, so he could demonize the Second Amendment. And even when he got caught, he went ahead with it. You think any of us are safe with crooks like this running around? Let's go ahead and go to the CNBC clip to explain it. World government run by mega banks, and we're their slaves. And in the 4-minute clip, they go through every one of the guests who agree we're slaves of the bankers. And all but one of the guests, there's 4 of them on the show, agree that they all agree we're slaves. Only one says it's not good. It's so good to be slaves to a world government run by who? Not by commies, not by Lenin, not by Stalin, not by Hitler, by banks who make the money and credit up out of nothing. Here's that clip.
Mostly what they do is hold summits.
I think that right now the question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Jim Urio, you say we've got some downside here, a correction in the markets. Fine. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? Aren't we all just counting on the fact that there's a Bernanke put and that we won't go any lower than, say, 5% down from here?
Of course we are, because if we look at the economic data, there's nothing to get excited about in that. So yesterday we saw some reluctance for the Bernanke Fed to expand their balance sheets and pump more money in. But the stock market knows that reluctance is totally different than not willing to do it at all. And that's why we saw oil implode and gold trade off heavily because...
All right, let's stop right there. And they go to the next guy. He says, of course we're slaves. My dad last week at his dental office got an intelligence report, is what they call it, so people read it and think it's special. It's all written to deceive. It says for law enforcement only, but all the barbershops and dental offices and stuff get it. And it's a public publication put out with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And they've got a big article in there about how evil I am, and I think there's a world government run by banks, and they've got me right next to David Duke. I don't even talk about race issues. This is what they do. But see, because I'm saying it's bad. So millions of publications get mailed out saying I'm the devil. But they can say it and it's good because they say it's good that the bankers run us and it's good we're slaves. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. When I'm at home, I had local CBS was sent down here by national CBS TV. They wanted to do an interview with me. The first of, not the first of many I've done, just one of many. And I'm sitting there talking to the interviewer, and he says, when you get home, are you calm or are you all agitated like you are when you're on air? And I said, no, I look at all the news and information, and I tend to get excited and agitated when I'm on the air. And so he's like, that isn't the real Alex Jones. And that's kind of like if I walked in and found my wife in bed with somebody and I got agitated, would that be the real Alex Jones, or would the calm Alex Jones be the Alex Jones? No, it all depends on the situation. But I was thinking today about how when I'm calm and focused researching at home, how cogent I am, and I can really articulate my ideas. That's why sometimes on my own little iPhone, I shoot videos that we upload to YouTube that get watched by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, sometimes per video, because I am more articulate when I'm walking down some forest path in a reflective moment and talking. I tend to get in here on air, and I'm just so angry at how obvious this criminal takeover is of our society. And I'm not that smart, and I figured it out. Why aren't other people figuring this out? Why are we allowing things to get to this point? Because the criminals that are in control of our society will keep stealing and robbing and wrecking and shutting down their competition through government until there's no competition left and no jobs left and no prosperity left. And this entire fake environmental movement is pushed not for the environment, but to be an anti-human, authoritarian, power-grabbing system. Here's an example. I saw an article today at Prisonplanet.com. I don't know why it wasn't posted on Infowars.com, but I just had it posted there. That is incredible. And that I should talk about for the entire broadcast. But there's just too much happening, and there's your calls. And I read this document. I read this article by Suzanne Posel. And it's written very dry, very professional, very journalistic. And, of course, I'd already seen some of the reports she links to put out by the United Nations and by their think tanks. And they coldly talk about an authoritarian world government they're going to set up and all the horrible things they're going to do to us and how the elites are going to live in these high-tech, compact, super-tech cities with life extension and how we're going to live in the wastelands and basically be hunted by their hunter-killer robots. And you're like, well, that sounds crazy. Really? That's what the Rockefeller Foundation says. That's what all of them put out. And they're in control of the world, okay? And they are putting out this horrible future as if they're the good guys just reporting on you what has to be done. But they're the ones actually working overtime to control society and put clamps on it to kill free market and to kill free ingenuity so that their monopolies can take control and set up what they call a neo-feudalistic system. Guys, will you pull up just the standard definition of serfdom or feudalism for folks? I'll give you my definition that's a composite and larger than what the Webster's will be. But it was a system set up in Europe, but also in every other ancient culture where there's a tiny, quote, nobility that serves a king, and they use poverty and control to keep people on very small pieces of land at a subsistence level so that they can be managed and controlled, and they're not taught how to read or write, and they're basically dumbed down. That's Agenda 21, 2012. It says, serf, a member of the lowest feudal class attached to the landowner by a lord and required to perform labor in return for certain legal or customary rights, which we don't even get now as serfs. An agricultural labor, call it peons in Mexico, under various similar systems, especially 18th to 19th century rule in Eastern Europe, a person in bondage or servitude. Now, a serf is in a feudal system. Let me have the definition of feudalism itself, please. I mean, I just gave you the definition, but the globalists themselves call it neo-serfdom, neo-feudalism. That's what the UN Biological Diversity Assessment, 1996, the one online is just a boil down. You've got to go to the library to get it. We went and got it at the UT library. It's in my film, The Road to Tyranny, 911, The Road to Tyranny. A political and economic system of Europe in the